Hey friends, today is day 9 of our Esther Bible reading plan, and this is one of my favorite stories because it really does mark this moment where everything that the Jews have had to endure up until this point, all of the humiliation and the edict proclaiming their death, everything that Mordecai has been through and Esther is about to be reversed, almost to like story to story. Remember the graphic I showed in my last video? We're going to start to see the second half of that, where the Jews are lifted high, where their salvation is going to be at hand. And it all starts on the heels of Haman's great plot to murder his arch nemesis, Mordecai. And while he's off planning this great death of Mordecai, lo and behold, the king is in his chambers and he's trying to sleep and he just can't. Have you ever had a restless night like this? And so what does he do? But he calls his officials in to read to him the book of memorable deeds, the Chronicles. I mean, come on, wouldn't that put you to sleep too? I know for me, it would put me to sleep. I often read to put myself to sleep. And what do you know? But it just so happens that the chapter they're reading from to help the king get back to sleep is the chapter about how Mordecai had actually saved the king's life, how he had discovered this great plot against the king and he saved the king's life. And so the king remembers and wants to know what has been done to honor Mordecai because of his actions. And his officials tell him, well, nothing has yet been done. And so the king, in his brashness to settle the score, says, okay, well, bring me whatever official is in the building, basically. And who do you think is the first person that they recommend? They're saying, oh, he's this guy. He's right, across the room. Let's go grab him. And it's Haman. Now, we've asked this whole plan, where is God? God's name isn't even mentioned in this book. It's stories like this, coincidences like this, that just show me, there's no other explanation for the series of events that happened today in this story than God behind the scenes at work, even when we can't quite see him or we don't know that he's there. So Haman comes in and the king, he's being vague about what he wants, and he just says, what should be done about the man the king wants to honor? And Haman, I give him a lot of grief in the email, but you got to think about it. He's just been ushered, briskly into the king's chambers, and the king is saying, what should I do about this man that I want to honor? Well, what do you think is about to happen? Well, Haman, being so filled with pride, thinks that the king is going to honor him. So he just pours it all out there, lays it all out. He thinks of the most honoring thing that could possibly come to a man the king wants to honor. Let royal robes be brought, which the king has worn, the horse that the king has ridden, on whose crown has been set. He's basically saying, well, set this person up like a king. Give him the king's clothes, the king's horse, the king's crown, and parade him through the streets, saying, this is one the king wants to honor. Treat me like a king. Some scholars have wondered here if this isn't a hint that Haman's his ambition goes beyond just wanting to be a member of the king's court, but does he actually secretly want to be king himself? And I think this story paints a picture that makes that easier to believe for sure. And so the king, of course, who just goes along with anything everyone says, because he's a man of his own household and he's the one in charge. Everything you've said, Haman, let it be done, but let it be done to Mordecai. And so the man who entered the king's chambers that morning in order to plot the death and ask for the death of his enemy is now unwittingly put in a situation where he has to lift his enemy up to the highest seat of honor. And there's something about this story that I think even carries into the New Testament. Those who are prideful, those who are full of themselves will be brought low. And those who are humble, who serve others and work for the benefit of others, they're the ones who are going to be lifted up and honored. And Haman learns that lesson in the hardest way possible. In fact, just in the chapter before, Mordecai and his whole people are the ones in mourning. Now, with this story, the reversal starts with Haman being the one to go home to his wife and his counselors in mourning. And they even tell him, and this, I mean, they could have said this a little bit sooner, right? If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of the Jewish people, you will not overcome, but surely fail. So now they even tell him, all of your plotting, all of your going against the Jews, if you have set against God's people, which I think they're starting to see the evidence of already working out, you are destined to fail. And I don't know where you are today, but I find great comfort in that. Those who come against God's people, who plot their death, who plot their humiliation, they are destined to fail. Even if for half the book it looks like they're winning, ultimately they are destined to fail. And from here on out in the story of Esther, we are going to read about how I think God and God's people come together and go from being the lowliest of the lowliest to being humiliated and destined for destruction. And they're going to be lifted up to the place of honor. I hope you're enjoying this plan. Let us know what you think. Let us know what questions you have. We love to hear from you. Happy Thursday, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.